one on that, was talking about, dogs and stuff like that. And then it got into birds. And you have to look at, people, trying to figure out people, let alone how can you even begin? A bird or a dog doesn't have any of the thought processes we have as a human. They think totally different. I mean, they don't have all these extra thoughts that we do. They have their basic wants and needs and desires, and pretty much, and love, and that's about all.
Sure. Honestly, what I find more interesting, well, vastly more interesting, really, than the idea of a psychic communicating with any sort of like live animal, is the number of paranormal events relating to animals who have passed away. I mean, it's relatively common as far as paranormal things go, and I'm sure you've heard at least a few of these stories before of people reporting their pets, like deceased pets, visiting them, which I think is very interesting, because I think it speaks to sort of the nature of consciousness and what it is to be alive. And if hauntings are all in our head, then yeah, maybe it makes sense, for people to see their cat or dog or anything else that they really cared about after it's passed. But if it's not all in people's head, then where are we? Then what does that say about the existence of animals and their level of consciousness and sort of their place in the world? So it's like that part of it really really interests me. Pets who want to communicate, like psychics who want to communicate with my pets. Well, that's fine. Like I talk to my dog enough.
I talk to mine quite a bit. Unfortunately, they don't respond.
Right.
I don't know. But I will say this: back about 10 years ago, that we hung Christmas lights up on our decking, and our dog was part terrier. Well, is part terrier and part poodle. It's now 20 years old and in diapers and totally blind, but still happy. But we were sleeping, and the dog noticed something was wrong. And what was wrong is that our decking caught on fire from the Christmas lights. And the dog came running. At least it comprehended something was up. Kept going to our door, barking real loud, and did that for a couple minutes till we opened the door and tried to figure out what's wrong. And the dog kept running, down the hallway and then coming back, wanting us to follow it. And he took us right to the sliding door, and boof, it was on fire out there.
Wow. Well, I mean, isn't that sort of what we depend on dogs for, though? I mean, like, I would never want anyone to think that I doubt the veracity of a dog's, love for its family, for instance. Like, I think that that's scientifically measurable, like that there's a reality to that. And so, I would expect a dog to notice some sort of danger like that, and I would expect them to respond to it. And I think that it's amazing and miraculous that your dog responded to it in that way. But it doesn't necessarily have to be paranormal, right?
No, I don't think it was. I just think the dog realized there was something wrong. Now, we had two other dogs. The other two dogs didn't even realize, didn't even care. I mean,
sure.
Dogs, I guess, have their own type of intelligence. The dog at least was smart enough to let us know. We would have lost our house and who knows whatever if the dog wouldn't have noticed it. And that's why my dog's still alive at 20 years old and blind and in diapers. I'd taken the dog, to the vet, and the first thing the vet says, "Hey, you need to put your dog down." And I go, "Why? It's not in pain. I don't mind changing diapers. I had 8 kids. I changed all their diapers. I don't mind." I look back at what the dog has saved my house, maybe saved, our lives, if the house would have, totally gone under in flames. Right. But I still, getting back to one thing, and then we can go on to whatever subject you want to. I just can't believe you can look at a photograph, I am sorry, of a dog or a horse or a parrot or whatever, and tell you everything about, that animal and what it's thinking about its owner. I mean, I can't buy that. I just can't.
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with that. Really, I mean, I don't know what else there really is to say about it. Frankly,
yeah. Well, it's a $250 bill to have that done too. I can tell you that.
Well, as much as I hate to sound like that guy, I think that might explain it, Gary. Honestly.
Well, I think it does. Uh-oh. Now, you're still there, right? Hopefully we didn't drop out.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it was a money thing. That's what they do. They charge, to, do a reading on your animal, $250. The same way, going back to this one ghost hunting group I had on, that went out only 2 to 3 people's houses. I found out, too, they slipped up and they said that they charged the people $300 to spend an hour or two at their house ghost hunting. That really is a slap in the face, in the paranormal field that I just shocked me.
Yeah, I mean, that's I think that's a clear ethical, sort of violation. I'm not very familiar with any ghost group that charges people for investigations. I think that, when it sort of comes to these subjects, there's an ethical way to monetize it. If you would like, and then that's, mostly selling articles and books and whatever else. But as far as charging, to help somebody, that, I think it crosses the line, personally. I wouldn't do it.
Okay, you're dropping out again.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. Well, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay, we just lost your line here. We'll try calling you back here in a second. I don't know if it's your battery going dead on your cell phone or your location. Let's give this a try back and see here. We'll give it a try. That's the problem too. Sometimes I hate to say it, you can be on a cell phone, and the signal just totally drops right out, and boom, there it is. Or the battery goes dead, which I find that happening quite often with some of the guests. They don't realize maybe their battery's starting to get old, and then everything just kind of drops out, and that's the end of it. But we'll give him another second or so, and we'll try, calling him back. But, I'm not trying to mock, mediums or psychics, because, I really think they have a place in it. I've talked to some very reputable, psychics on my show that I had one where I was trying to find my motorcycle key for a week. I couldn't find it anywhere. And on the show, she asked me a couple questions and told me right where it was. During the break, guess what? It was right where she told me it was. So was that luck, or did she actually... Well, no. Where's that? Okay, I think we got him back. Okay, do we have you back?
Gary, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, honestly, I was sort of pacing back and forth in our hotel room, and I figured out that I think there's a dead spot on the other side of the room. I'm going to avoid that side of the room, I think, and we should be good.
Well, maybe it was a portal to nowhere.
Well, certainly, one way or another, right?
Oh, yeah. Now, you were talking about earlier before we went on the air, birds and stuff like that. I just got to ask you a question. What's your feeling about Mothman and stuff like that?
Well, if you want to talk sort of in a general sense about Mothman and that creature's popularity. Now, I was in Illinois recently, interviewing with. Are you familiar with Seth Breedlove and Small Town Monsters in their series of documentaries on different cryptid creatures?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Oh, well, I was. Hopefully, some of your listeners are. Now, I was down in Illinois relatively recently, interviewing with them, sort of, talking about Mothman and Thunderbirds and sort of weird flying creatures, and something that I had discussed with them was sort of the idea that why Mothman is so popular. And Mothman is really weirdly popular. Like, on social media, like, people, like, all of the sightings and things aside, like, Mothman is just really, really blowing up. Like, it's a concept people seem to love. And so I think probably the big reason for that is that if you look at, say, like the 66 to 67, Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, they're sort of the epitome of high strangeness, like it's got everything. It's got, a possible cryptid creature. There are UFOs involved. There's Men in Black. I mean, it's not the advent of Men in Black, but it's still pretty early on, like Albert Bender and his MIB stuff wasn't that far before the Point Pleasant stuff. And so I think what Mothman does and why people love it so much is it acts as this sort of supernatural cipher. Like, Mothman is whatever you want Mothman to be. Like, if you're interested in UFOs, well, there's UFO stuff attached, like, who knows? If you're interested in the supernatural, well, people talk about the cornstalk curse and like a supernatural phenomena associated with Mothman. I mean, and it gets even weirder, it leaves all of this room open for people to speculate about, like, interdimensional creatures and just whatever you want it to be. And so I think that's probably why Mothman is just so incredibly popular right now.
Do you think that the movies, all three of them, like the Jeeper Creepers, had something to do with that? Because that kind of was a takeoff in a way of the Mothman, wasn't it?
No, I think on a superficial level, yes. I think that, well, and it's funny that you actually mentioned that, Gary, because I've actually had a couple of witnesses who, with whom I've spoken, who describe what they've seen. And keep in mind, when you're an investigator, like, most people are professional writers. It's often very difficult for people to put into words their experience, especially when it's so far outside of normal human experience. And so I've actually had more than one person come forward and use Jeepers Creepers, like the Creeper or whatever, from those movies, sort of as a reference point to be like, hey, it kind of looked like this guy. So, like, that's not particularly unusual. Do I think that those movies, though, have influenced the narrative? Maybe I would be more inclined to think that they exist because of the pre-existing narrative and the obsession people already had with weird winged creatures, rather than Jeepers Creepers actually really, influenced any of the sightings that I've received, or certainly anything in the past.
Huh. Also, you go into Arizona, up in the canyons and stuff like that, they have reported something similar, but more like a devil-like creature with wings. Have you heard about that?
Honestly, I haven't so much. I'd be very interested to hear more. I'd be pretty surprised if one of my colleagues hadn't. And, that definitely sounds like the kind of thing that I would want to, to follow up with them. Like, I think I mentioned earlier, I've been part of this. I guess we've called ourselves a task force.